All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for podcast number 65.
The Twitch VOD.
Enjoy, guys.
All
right, guys. Hello.
This is podcast 65.
65.
Never worked to so little.
Except once.
And that was a very noble cause.
Very noble cause, indeed.
Yes.
Good to see y'all. How's everyone doing today? We got Johnny Wheelchair, Ravison,
And Little Duck.
Little Duck. Hey.
Shy.
Can't wait for
Shy.
69. Hey. Hey. Heyo, Jad the Mad.
Get mad.
The Rud Rappel, 97.
Rudra Patel. Yes.
Dev Patel, but his brother Rudra.
Yes.
Indeed.
Eric Wobblewalt.
Oh, yo guys, I unfortunately sent my letter too late for the unboxing. That's okay, Eric, no worries.
Yeah, we'll just get to the next one.
No problem.
Yeah.
Lunar. Finally not 30 minutes late.
Jarvinen.
On a previously note that some of you might have noticed, but look at what came in the unboxing if you hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Look at this shirt. Look at it. Look at it. Look upon this beauty. And it fits me perfectly, so,
Yeah.
You know I'm going to have to wear it one of these days for a JoJo's reaction.
No, not at all. Really? Are you sure?
Hey, what's up, guys? Good to see you,
So-
Terumi Granbell.
I did something last night
What's
that
that?
I did not expect. I rewatched 2 episodes of a very particular show,
Could it be?
Bleach.
Oh, my.
I went back and watched the first episode and episode 342 because I love episode 342. I will
Yes.
still hold that as a great episode. And it was pretty crazy. And it's rather fitting then that we're doing a podcast talking about high impact moments and their value.
Yeah, and this podcast specifically is going to be one that we didn't know how to title it exactly.
Right.
Because it's not going to be just talking about the high impact moments. It's going to be about certain perceptions around the high impact moments and how they affect us positively, and just how I would say they affect our perception of stories and shows and anime overall.
Yeah.
And it's something it's very, I would say it's very weird to talk about because it's not just multifaceted. It's something that specifically targets, I would say, different types of stories.
Right.
And then stories that might not be considered to have high impact moments, you have to actually look for them and you find out that no, every story has a high impact moment. It's just how high of an impact is it correlating to the rest of the story.
Right.
And we'll be talking a lot about that.
And what those high impact moments look like, considering that shows are different, so they'll have different forms. Like a high impact moment, for instance, in like say Sangatsu, is very different than a high impact moment in Kill la Kill.
Totally. So. And we'll be going into that, and we're going to be asking you guys a lot of questions too.
Yes.
Things that could be specifically like, asking for your guys' high impact moments in specific shows.
Favorite examples and things like that. Yeah.
And just thoughts and opinions on this whole topic, because we're going to be approaching it from a very, as subjective as we can. Like, we're going to try and avoid the
As subjective as we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just trying to avoid all the kind of the assumptions and statements make about what makes certain things good or bad.
Sure, yes, absolutely, because that's the whole point of high impact moments.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into it,
Yes.
VIP shout out.
I have to give a VIP shout out to Christmas for Juan.
Thank you so much for your support.
Yes,
man.
this person recently joined the VIP crew, and I believe the Discord recently, according to their Patreon. But thank you all. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
VIP is really generous for anyone that does that. So
Yes.
thank you so much for supporting us, and looking forward to talking with you on Discord.
Indeed.
So, Jacob, high impact moments.
Yes.
There are plenty out there just to pick from any show or what have you. But it seems like a lot of people prefer to recommend kind of viewing a show because of you're going to love this high impact moment that happens.
And it totally makes sense because because one of the things when we were talking about the idea for this podcast is it wasn't just the high impact moments themselves, but how one moment can change your entire perspective of a story theoretically.
Right.
Which I totally get, and that's why we recommend those stories, because we want to show people and share with people something that moved us greatly that we haven't necessarily ever seen before, right?
Right.
I don't know what it's like for most people, but I know for me, if nothing else, just from an academic perspective of like wanting to learn more about how storytelling works,
Right.
I want to see those things that I won't find in other stories, right?
Yes.
But like, we'll talk a lot about, say, something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and there are definitely high impact moments in there, but at the same time, the thing that we most often praise about it is its consistency, not actually singular moments.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about is, first off, like Psychronius said, what is a high impact moment in our opinion? And then how does every show, cross genre, specifically with anime, handle high impact moments? It seems like specifically with high impact moments, you can see them as basically the climax of a story arc. Whenever this is just one of the ways to look at them. A simplest way to look at it is the story's ending. Most stories will build up towards the ending of a story as being some kind of high impact moment. Other stories, like My Hero Academia, for instance, will introduce a mini arc of sorts within the overall narrative with Todoroki's development.
Sure.
And then episode 210 ends up being this incredibly high impact moment because it's relegated around a character. So you have the overall structure of the plot, and there's the high impact moments of those. There's the mini arcs within that plot, and there's the high impact moments of those as well.
Which oftentimes do fall on the endings of those mini arcs.
Right. And then I would say that the other kind where it's the especially with anime, because they have the ability to present the visual medium in such a way that is absolutely over the top and exciting and all full of energy, by having it be tied to not just the characters but a moment of conflict.
Right.
So not necessarily like a shonen type conflict where two punches, Todoroki and Deku splash. And
although that is one of the places
stuff
where it's the most clear and easiest to define and locate the high impact moments.
Right, which is why I'd say in shonen it's very easy to identify where the high impact moments are.
Because high impact moments are very subjective.
Totally.
Like of what it is. Because really, when we talk about a high impact moment, it is a moment that has a high level of impact on you, right?
On us,
right?
On whoever is the viewer.
Exactly. Whoever it is that they're saying this is a high impact moment for. Right. And then, but usually the goal of stories will be to anticipate their audience and craft the story in such a way so that it guides the audience into those high impact moments.
So that they're ready to receive it and have the most emotional gratification behind it.
So that crescendo that they build up to, that da-da-da-da, is what the author sees as being a high impact moment is also what the audience sees as being a high impact moment.
And that's just good communication. That's good connection.
Exactly.
That's just good delivery of your story.
Being on the same page with your audience.
Yeah, but a lot of times you'll see subversions of that. You'll see things where the high impact moment is something that is just the reveal high impact moment.
Sure.
It's where the high impact moment is actually the build up towards another high impact moment.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the conclusion to something, right?
Exactly.
It really can be anything, and that makes talking about it kind of weird.
Right.
Because you can't really talk about it from like an objective, clinical, sort of standpoint. And if you can, then I would say you need to get back into enjoying stories. Ooh, because or that maybe that story could have done some things better.
Yeah. So this also leads to having beginnings ending up being a lot of the high impact moments.
Sure.
When you are trying to bring your audience into the story, you sometimes utilize some kind of dramatic presentation of a story moment in order to arrest the attention of your audience. I'd say Attack on Titan's opening episode or just its opening is a great example of that. So this is a very subjective topic, and while we could go into more definitions as to what a high impact moment is, this is why we want to interact with you guys in this podcast specifically and see what are some of the high impact moments for you and why they were high impact moments. Because we'll mention a couple here, but these range from things that had high impact in what they meant in not only like the immediate sense, but also in retrospect, and then also on rewatch.
Yeah,
Something someone said.
Yeah, from Jack Jarvinen. Human memory isn't very good. High impact moments are the kinds of things that stay. Exactly.
Yep.
And you think back on those, and even if you can't remember much of the show, like for instance, I've mentioned Bleach. I don't remember most of Bleach. Yep. I know kind of what happens, right? But I don't really remember the episode by episode.
Nope.
No way.
Yep.
But I'll remember those high impact moments. And even if I might look back on the show as a whole and say, I would not recommend for most people to watch Bleach, right? Because I don't actually think that it's that objectively good or, whatever, right?
Or another way to look at it, I don't think the high impact moments in Bleach are worth all the other stuff you have to get to in order to experience those high impact moments.
But that's the thing where it gets, complicated.
Exactly.
Because when we watched it, right, we were different people at that time. And it was absolutely worth the build-up to get to those high impact moments, right? We loved it, right? We were along for the ride.
Okay.
And then I'll speak for myself. I was absolutely along for the ride. As time went on, I started to see other stories, and I started to see how other stories could do things.
Right.
And then the prospect of, say, rewatching the show to get to that properly built-up high-impact moment, right? Like, the battle on Sogyoku Hill, or that's how it's called, what the term is. But something like that, right?
Yeah.
First time I watched it, I might have been like, oh, yeah, with it every step of the way, build up, fantastic, perfect. But the idea of going back to it, I'm like, well, I don't know if I would necessarily want to rewatch the entirety,
right.
But that part was really good, so I might want to rewatch that part, right?
Yeah.
And it's that idea that can elevate the whole, right? It's in the same way that there's the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
Actually, no, that might be exactly what it is. Is that those moments where you have that 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 or whatever it is, right? Elevates the rest of it, and you're saying, yeah, I know the rest of it maybe isn't that great. There are a bunch of landmines to sort of avoid or just be aware of. But oh, come on. This part was just so good. It makes me love the story as a whole.
Right, that's definitely an example of something like Haruhi for you.
Mm-hmm.
Haruhi and the Disappearance movie.
Yeah.
The Haruhi show, I am not that big of a fan of. I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate it or anything. But I would not recommend it to most people to actually watch in order to get to the payoff, really, which isn't even in the show. It's in the Disappearance movie.
And there are tons of landmines along the way. Endless 8, that is one of the worst things to ever happen in anime.
One of the worst anime landmines of all time.
Like, it's bad. Someday in the Rain, while I love that episode, it's a landmine, right?
Yeah.
Or even the spin-off series that ended up coming up, right? I love the spin-off series, but I've tried rewatching the spin-off series, and I'm a big Haruhi fan, and I can't do it, right? I'll just be like, this is cringe. I don't like it. I don't like it, right?
Yeah.
But I'll remember those parts in the spin-off series that made the whole rest of the spin-off series worth it to me, right? Mm-hmm. Because they did something, and I was like, man, that was so good. I love it. And I'm so glad that I watched the show, even though I wouldn't really want to rewatch the show. I just want to go back and watch the 3 or 4 episodes that I really liked.
Yeah, and this is where the subjective part comes in. For a lot of people, it's not okay to excuse those landmines for the purpose of getting to the high impact moments.
Right. And because everyone's different.
Because everyone's different. And then for a lot of other people, it's like, no, but you don't understand. You won't value those high impact moments unless you experience the whole gamut of things. That's why you need to watch all the Bleach filler or the Naruto filler or something like that.
But
blah, blah, blah.
Real, when I was watching episode 342 last night, I really liked that episode. I still stand that it's a good episode that pretty much anyone could watch out of context and be like, yeah, that was pretty good, right?
Right.
Not exactly great representation of the rest of the show, but it was good, right? But then when you have the added benefit of having seen the rest of the show, right?
Yes.
Even if you wouldn't want to go back and rewatch the rest of the show, there's something about this episode. Maybe it's the fact that I'm an Ichiruki shipper. I don't know. But it creates this incredible sense of nostalgia within me where I'm like, this is fantastic. I wish it was more of this, right? But I will absolutely love this one episode, even if the episode on an objective, out of 10 scale isn't even a perfect 10, right? Or necessarily even close, right? What it does for the rest of the story, even though it's just contained in this one episode and doesn't actually go to the rest of it, does so much for me, right?
There's a lot of shows that we've watched recently that have had varying levels of, I would say, varying marks on this spectrum specifically. A Place Within the Universe, we've taught it as probably the greatest anime of this year. And we haven't seen a lot of anime this year,
yeah.
but I'm still holding out that Place Within the Universe will probably be the anime of the year, at least nominated by most people in this year.
Fun fact. You might have seen this on the Discord.
Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah.
New York Times, not for anime, but for
shows.
international shows of 2018.
Of all.
Yeah, just all international shows.
Sorry.
Put Place Within the Universe in the top 10 list.
Yep.
Like, and these aren't animated shows, just all international shows outside the U.S. that came out in 2018.
And the reason why we're doing this so early, even though it's more of just kind of us to kind of put our opinion out there and see if we end up being right, because something like Mob Psycho Season 2 could come out
totally
and just blow it out of the water or something, even though I think that comes out in January, so I'm not sure
how that works.
Yeah. But anyway, and yeah, there's a lot of other great shows coming out around now. We have some on a poll right now. So the reason why for that is that the high impact moments of A Place Within the Universe are separated with very little other stuff.
Right.
There is very little time gap in between the high impact moments, for us at least, of A Place Within the Universe and the rest of the show. What that does in this effect is, if you can kind of imagine a graph with me, kind of basically is a swing effect like this, like a waves. Imagine waves, like kid-drawn waves,
Yeah.
At the top of each crest of the wave is a high-impact moment, and then it goes down into a little valley of building up for the next high-impact moment.
Right.
But the thing is, if you have very little build-up between high-impact moments, what that basically means is that your high-impact moments have to be really good, because there's not as much build-up anticipation for it.
You have to make sure that it's good enough to last through the lulls.
Yes,
right?
within and of itself.
Yeah.
But but because the lulls are especially short, you don't get the benefit of something like Hunter x Hunter, for instance, where they can weave multiple aspects of the story within, like the Chimera Ant arc, for instance, where you're building up for a long time towards very specific conclusions, and when it hits so hard. But I still think Place Within the Universe's style of doing it that way is better overall for me. Like, I prefer that more, because it's basically the show saying how confident it is within its high-impact moments that it doesn't need all this build-up. It doesn't need to go into the valleys. It just hits you over and over and over again.
And that was one of the biggest culture shocks, I feel like, or culture shock, but just shocks when we transitioned into Hunter x Hunter, watching it at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because we knew it was slow in the beginning, right? But it was the idea that Hunter x Hunter's style of doing things for like episode to episode was completely different than something like Madoka Magica or Place Within the Universe,
or even just typical shonen.
Or that too, and that's a whole other enchilada.
Yeah,
but
we'll save that for the Hunter x Hunter podcast when we're finished with the show.
But it's the idea that we just in general appreciate things that we have to wait for. Right?
Yeah.
If it comes to us easy, then we start to take it for granted, right?
Yeah.
In A Place Within the Universe, absolutely. The show is amazing, and I loved each and every episode. But even when I think back on it, there will be episodes where I'm like, oh, dang, what was it about that episode that I loved so much? Oh, okay, yeah, it was this thing or it was that thing. But it doesn't come as easily to me because I loved all of it, right?
It's not separated with valleys. So in this respect, I think it was Lunar who said earlier that shonen, just typical shonen, are the kings of making high impact moments
because they build up to it so much.
What I would say is they're not actually the king of high impact moments; they're the kings of build up, because the build up itself is something that you have to fill with actual story. And I'll tell you, it's incredibly hard to write proper build up. Like I would say writing a high impact moment is easier, like writing it in and of itself, than writing the build up towards the high impact moment, because the high impact moment itself needs the context surrounding it in order for it to be a high impact moment. Right. So writing just the individual dialogue bits, the scene, the storyboarding presentation and stuff, it's going to be difficult, but it's made easy by the fact that you have all this other stuff there. But deciding what beats of the story will be spent and how much of it will be spent on building up to a proper high impact moment, I can't imagine having to write that. I think about things like, Code Geass's ending.
That legendary second
Cowboy
season.
Bebop's ending. Think about all like your greatest anime endings out there, and how difficult the ones that actually prepared for the ending. Now, you'll know the ones that didn't because they didn't build up to the ending.
Right.
But the ones that did build up to the ending, like how well they did that.
Right. And because like in a lot of ways, I feel like that's one of the things that helps differentiate Hunter x Hunter a lot from other shonen, not just in the sense that it does a lot of deconstruction stuff, but the idea that the build-up is, in some ways, it isn't more enjoyable than the actual payoffs, because the payoffs are really good. But because of how they do things with internal consistencies in the world and character motivations being such a strong point of the story, like so foundational to it, the build-up itself is all part of the journey, and you love it, right? Whereas in something like, say, Bleach, the capitulation of, say, like the Soul Society arc, right? I really enjoyed it. I was hyped as hell for Ichigo to fight Byakuya, right? And they did some good build-up along the way, but when I think about the build-up, I'm like, no, it actually wasn't like
it wasn't even build-up.
You know, like it was build-up, and because of how they had set it up within the context of the rest of the story, it sort of got me into that mode where I was just like, all right, yeah, this is awesome. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
But when I would think about, say, like rewatching it, I would kind of just want to like skip to the end part, right? And that's really tough, because I feel like this is one of those things where we've talked about a lot about like quiet moments and lingering moments, you know, and I feel like that's kind of what more drama-centric stories do in lieu of, say, the shonen build-up type things. Because, you know, with shonen, it's clear. You've got the build-up, you've got the capitulation, and there you go, right?
Right. Because it's a different energy.
Because it's a different energy, quite literally.
Quite literally different energy. Something where in shows like Toradora, or I saw someone mention your Lion April.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
your Lion April and
you
Toradora.
need those quiet moments, because generally the build-up, and this is something that I've always like praised any show that did this well, was when build-up is blended with characterization. Because most stories I've seen, when they start to do build-up towards high-impact moments, it's related to the plot in some way. And when I say plot, I mean about as disconnected from characters as can be.
The idea of just stuff that needs to happen in order for, you know, the MacGuffin must be found in order for the bad guy to be stopped or something like that.
Right. If you can blend characterization with that, you've won me over, like 100%.
Right. Because then what's happening is when the build-up is happening, you're not aware that it is in fact built up to that high-impact moment. And that's
So it makes it feel like there's less time in between the high-impact moments.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that has blown me away with so many stories. In particular, I think with Toradora, because I watched it early on enough that I wasn't really looking for all those little details and such. That
to where you could just predict every story.
Exactly, and sort of like track with what was going on better. But there would be these high impact moments, and I'd be like, wait, where was the build up? It fits. I know that this was built up to, right? Because there isn't anything jarring about the fact that this thing happened, right? But it would only be on rewatch that I would actually be able to see the build up, and then it would be this wonderful thing where I would be able to enjoy the build-up for the build-up in and of itself, not for the anticipation of what it would, you know, bring about.
Yeah. Peps2, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime resubscription.
Yes,
it's your third month subscribed to us. Wow. Thank you so much.
Is this how I win storytelling? Yes.
Okay, I think I just put that. Okay, there we go. Yeah. For a second, I thought I just muted your your notification here on the OBS here. But yeah, this is definitely how you win storytelling. Yeah. Well, your name is also building up to a high impact moment.
Yes, it is. And you don't quite realize, again, in your name, that it's doing that until it does it. Ta-da!
Eric Wald with the 100 bits. Will there be a podcast next Monday, considering it's Christmas Eve? So what we've basically kind of realized is that we'll be playing it entirely by ear. One of the things with the podcast is that we can definitely sneak in a podcast on Christmas Eve, because we could just do one that's a little bit shorter. Exactly. Maybe 45 minutes to an hour or something. But the Berserk manga thing, that might be a little bit tricky to do. So it might take a break. But you'll find out tomorrow when we do our Berserk manga volume review.
Pushing off the decision as long as possible.
As long as possible. That's how we do things here.
Yeah, that's right.
Notice how stories, how either huge slow build-ups or constant attempts to up the ante. That's an interesting point. The up the ante part I consider to be kind of the JoJo's arena. So here's something that I find to be kind of fun about JoJo's specifically in a way that separates it from something like Gurren Lagann or Kill la Kill. Okay. So Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill are the shows where I feel like it's all build up, and the high impact moments actually sometimes become just big build up moments. Like the stories themselves have some really big high impact moments, but I would say they're actually very few because the high impact moments tend to be the same. So what actually is that they make the build up fun. They make the build-up fun and exciting.
Yeah, especially with something like Kill la Kill, because when I think about it, the plot points that they have in there, they haven't really capitalized on them much.
Nope.
You know, Ryuko still doesn't, with where we're at in the show, Ryuko still doesn't really know what was going on, right? Satsuki has sort of just kept that a secret. And we got the whole thing with Nui, which was...
That was a high-impact moment.
That was a high-impact moment, for sure, right? But even then, it was not the capitulation of something that we already knew was coming, right? It was like, oh, okay, this is a surprise, and it's insane, and it's crazy, and we love it, right?
Right.
But a lot of times it's just like the antics of Ryuko and Mako and Satsuki and the Four Devas and just all the craziness that ensues that we would happily just watch, even if it wasn't directly connected to the plot.
But the main thing I would say with those is that there's no build-up to those.
Right,
those are all individual moments that actually build up the overall narrative as a whole. Yeah. Gurren Lagann does this also really well with constantly introducing new characters, new mechs. There is a certain high-impact moment earlier on in the series that's really, really big. But actually, if you're watching Gurren Lagann, for instance, all the way through, there's a lot of build-up, and the high-impact moments are pretty well spaced out.
They are.
There's a lot of stuff that happens in between there. So back to JoJo's. JoJo's, I would say, just given how much we've seen thus far, you know, we're building up to the encounter with Dio, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be awesome. We've had part 1 and part 2 already. One of the things that I've noticed that JoJo's does is instead of actually having everything directly tie into the build-up of the overall narrative in some way, what they try to do, and this is something, again, this is my opinion, I don't know if this is a great way to describe it, but they try and hit you really hard with high-impact moments that have been built up by almost the declarations of the main character. This is a weird way to look at it. Basically, the JoJo of the narrative declares where the buildup will be, declares what will be a high-impact moment.
Right. We will face Dio before Holly, succumbs to her illness or whatever.
But the actual episode-by-episode story is not that well crafted with regards to build-up and the spacing between the high-impact moments. Because it's not really about that. I think it's about the character just basically grabbing you and saying, I declare this to be a high-impact moment. I am Joseph Joestar, and this will be a high-impact moment.
Your next line will be, what a high-impact moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that makes JoJo's kind of fun. I can't really break down the Araki JoJo's formula.
Right.
Maybe
we'll have to read his book for that. Yeah.
Midway through the story stuff. By the way, people were saying, don't read that book yet.
Because it's got spoilers.
Because it's got spoilers in it.
Yeah, I can imagine it would.
Totally. So, we were talking about JoJo's, but then we were talking about how there's
spacing in between.
Spacing in between.
Yeah.
Okay,
so that's what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say the spacing part is something where I feel a lot of the opinions come in. Yes, because I think that we can objectively say that high impact moments exist. And build-up exists.
Right.
But it's the spacing in between build-up and high-impact moments that everyone has their own appreciation for.
Right.
Everyone has their own flavor or taste for.
Because since the high-impact moments will impact people differently based on, the person, that also means that the build-up for those high-impact moments will have different value because people will, one, have a different opinion on the build-up itself of how they enjoy it.
Right.
But then also whether it's worth the high-impact moment.
Yes.
Whether the high-impact moment makes the build-up worth it based on how much they enjoyed the build-up versus not enjoying it versus the high-impact moment itself and how much they liked it, right?
Right.
And it's one of those weird things because I feel like with the shows that you really end up loving, it's kind of, I've used this analogy before, but it's like falling in love, right? Where the high-impact moment, the person in this case, is so amazing and you're so in love with them that all the faults that they have, right? All the sun to their dere, right?
Nice.
It's all daijobu, right? Because you love the person so much, right?
Right.
And with shows, when I think about, say, Bleach, for instance, right? When we first watched it, we were all like, oh yeah, all good, it's cool. Maybe get a little bit frustrated when they would go into all those filler arcs when we wanted them to get back to like the fights that we were hyped up for, but that was just how it was. And then when we saw different shows, then it started changing, right? What we perceived as being the build-up that we were willing to sort of put up with for the high-impact moments shifted. And then when we got into something like, say, Hunter x Hunter, that was where a lot of it, I feel like, shifted back. Not completely, because, we're different people and all that stuff. But the idea of that there are different ways to do things in story, right?
Right. And it really made us question a lot of the ways that high-impact moments can be delivered. One of the assumptions I had made that I feel like has some merit to it, but it's not empirically right, is that the less time you have between high-impact moments, the better the show is. Now, I would posit that there is less risk involved with creating a story that has less build-up time between high-impact moments. The idea is that if you have something like what we would call like the perfect one-cour show, like A Place for the Universe.
You know what you're getting.
You know what you're getting. It hits all the high-impact moments within like one episode. Has every high impact. Every episode has a high-impact moment. There's the downtime is basically just the episode length,
Right.
And
exactly.
other than that, there's not much else to it. Now, the show A Place for the Universe, I would have to rewatch, more times before I would get like that perfect memory of it.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that's special and something that I'd kind of forgotten up until now was that I remember high impact moments when they're separated by more downtime.
Yep.
So an example of this that I think is probably one of the greatest high impact moments in anime. And the weird thing is that it's both surrounded by lots of breathing time, but also not. I'm talking about an ending to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to be very careful here with regards to spoilers.
Because if you haven't seen that show,
If you haven't seen Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, you should. I will not spoil it here. I will tell you, though, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood has so many times where they deftly handle build-up and high-impact moments super well. But there are specific character storylines, however, specific individual character storylines that have incredible amounts of build-up. And they wait for a very long time to capitulate the high-impact moment story-wise until the very end. And there's a specific storyline in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood with a specific character that really, okay. It's a moment that will chill you to the bone watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. It is best watched in dub and sub.
And it's a very ironic choice of words.
Yes, I know what I'm doing.
But yeah,
so
oh boy,
I'm not going to say exactly what, because there might be people that haven't seen
There's
it there.
plenty of high impact moments though in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, especially the ending. So the fact that we are being ambiguous and it might not be clear which one we're talking about
shows how good
the show is.
Yeah.
But the fact is, with a lot of them, most of them, in fact, they didn't really build up to them that much.
Yes.
Right? It was more like the build-up was seeded early on.
And then it was deferred for a while.
And then it was deferred. It was allowed to sort of like stew so that we might be thinking about it, but it wasn't actively playing a part in the story that we could see or in a way that we expected. And then when they capitulate on it for the different high-impact moments in the ending of Brotherhood, which is amazing.
Brotherhood is really worth it, especially for just the ending. It's
the ending
so
is
good.
fantastic. And it's
like
with
20
Brotherhood, probably one of the reasons...
Amazing.
And probably one of the reasons we love it so much is because we were so distracted by all the other parts of the show that could be considered as build-up, in the sense that they were letting all the other things sort of be on the back burner and stew in the back of our minds for a bit. But we didn't realize that. And then suddenly they capitalized on it, and it was incredible. That's one of the reasons why I probably love the Haruhi franchise so much, because by the time I got to the Disappearance movie, I already loved the show. And then I watched that, and then I realized that they were doing build-up for an entirely different kind of story.
Yep.
And then it added all this new context, all this new value, and then suddenly I'm, singing its praises despite things like Endless Eight.
Yeah. What we can conclude from this is that it helps a lot when the build-up towards the high-impact moment wins you over to the story enough that when the high impact moment comes, you're obviously going to go bananas crazy for it because
exactly.
Nobu FGO, thank you so much for the follow. Glad to have you here. Question here from Little Duck. Would you say high impact moments with build up that is noticeable is better than when the build up is subtle and almost indistinguishable? That's what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, they're very different kinds, and you can do both. I mean, they're all good. The question is whether you have to basically say, I'm going to go through this build-up not because I enjoy the build-up, but because I can tell that it's building up to something, and I'm holding out that it's going to make everything worth it.
An example of this is done really well in Ruby. I would say that Ruby as a show is something that constantly struggles with its pacing and just kind of figuring out what kind of show it wants to be. But Ruby as a show had probably one of the best capitulation high impact moments at the end of volume 3 that really just shook the fan base to an incredible extent. But the thing that it didn't do was it didn't end the feeling of this constant build-up in this grand overarching conflict. The problem with a lot of people's things about Ruby is that they can't get into the show enough that they're willing to wait for that kind of capitulation on the build-up.
And that's one of the reasons that the people who love it so much, is because they fell in love with it back when it was just fun antics at school with a completely amazing soundtrack and some good choreography with shadow background characters.
Yeah.
And then the high impact moment happened, and it just blew our minds. It blew our minds, right? And then we're telling everybody about it, but then the people that didn't get into it probably because they hadn't heard of it or didn't really care about the early stuff. And now we're saying, no, but get through it. It'll be worth it, right? Yeah, exactly. And that can make things a bit more difficult.
Yeah. There's a part in Avatar, The Last Airbender. This might be kind of spoilery, but I would say...
Which part are you talking about?
The storm.
Oh.
There's a part in Avatar where they go into the backstories of a couple of the main characters.
Right.
And this is, when looked back on in retrospect, one of the greatest episodes
of the show,
of the entire show.
Yeah, it's amazing.
However, in the moment, it's one of those episodes that could be looked at as build-up. And I would say that it is an episode of build-up. One of the things I've just noticed when people watch this show is that by the time they get to the storm, this episode, if they don't like the show yet, they won't be able to value this as build-up because they're not attached to the characters. Now, I'm using this. This ties into something here. But my firm belief is that you don't actually want people to be invested in the story necessarily in order for the build-up to hit on the high-impact moments, in order for them to appreciate the story, etc. You actually want to get them into the characters. Now, it's weird to separate story from characters, but
the characters are the story.
The characters are the story.
The story is what happens to the characters, and because we care about the characters, we care about what happens.
Well said.
When you brought up the storm and you brought up build-up, I actually thought you were going to say something different, because here's the thing. I don't see the storm as build-up. I see the storm as a capitulation on build-up that started in episode 3. Storm is episode 12.
Yes, but
it builds up in turn to other stuff down the road.
Totally.
But the thing is that all the stuff with the characters and their backstories was actually first established for both the characters in the storm that get the backstory and development. It was built up in episode 3 way earlier, right? And that was the point when I watched that show. When I watched that episode where I was like, okay, I like this show, right? I really like this show, and I'm so excited to see what happens next. And then when the episode 12 came around, The Storm, that was the capitulation that I didn't see coming, right? And when they gave the backstory, it wasn't that it was backstory as like oh, this is build up for something else that's going to happen, but it was rather the explanation on all the things that I had been seeing up till this point, right?
Right.
And
but
it
if you
completely
didn't
sidelined me.
Right, but if you didn't care about episode 3, the storm wouldn't have mattered to you.
Exactly.
That's my point, is that while it is definitely both a build-up and a capitulation moment, a high-impact moment, it's the added value of, like, 2020 hindsight and having rewatched the show that makes the storm into, almost in my opinion, not even a build-up moment anymore. No. It's a complete just high-impact moment.
Yeah,
because it's one of the coolest things of where certain characters end up getting the huge focus of the story. So anytime you see me kind of criticizing the buildup of a specific story, it's usually because the story doesn't seem to connect with me with regards to the characters yet.
Right, and that's why high-impact moments can be so... Not subjective, because of course they're subjective, but why they can vary so wildly as opposed to what they do to the audience.
Yep.
Because the build-up to the high-impact moments, it is all to make sure that you are attached to the characters, right?
Yep.
And the sooner you get attached to the characters, the less you care about the build-up, or the less you see that it is build-up.
The less you get bothered by any kind of build-up
because
way.
you just see it as, okay, this is this great story that I'm seeing and wonderful, and then the high-impact moment comes around and it's like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Back to Caleb's ex that he doesn't want to talk about, but Bleach, the thing that when I was watching episode 1 and 342, the thing that made me like pause so much with 342 is that it seemed like they were acknowledging that thing that I always considered to be the best aspect of Bleach, which was not the Determinator aspect, it was not the powers or the whatever, or the fights or anything like that, but it was actually the character dynamic between Ichigo and Rukia. As far as the two main characters and the pseudo mentor / fish out of water story that they told, I thought it was great. Before they even got to the Soul Society arc, that is what most people consider to be the best part of Bleach, I was absolutely on board with these characters. My favorite aspect of Bleach is the high school antics of them just gallivanting around and trying to figure out where to stow his body. So that, and because of that, when it finally came time for the Soul Society arc to happen, and Rukia's whisked away, and Ichigo's like, I have to go rescue her, I was completely and totally on board with that arc, even though it took a long time to actually capitulate, right? Because I cared so much about the characters. That was the entire show to me. So the fact that then they were basically like, put everything else to the side, right? This is the only thing that matters. I was absolutely right there with it. Which, of course, was why the drop-off after that point was so disappointing to me, because it was like the show had... lost its way, to quote Kill la Kill.
Nice. The reason why we have a lot of Bleach podcasts lately is because Jacob's been psychoanalyzing his past self with regards to why he appreciated Bleach so much back then, or can he still find something really good about it and understand where he was at, maybe.
It's not even that can I still find something good about it. It's the idea that there's this point where... I think we mentioned this earlier, but in Narnia, in the Narnia books, C.S. Lewis as the foreword or the dedication, he was like, to my nieces and nephews, that one day you will be young enough for fairy tales, right?
Right.
The idea that one day they will become young enough again for fairy tales, and that when we're younger and we are more wide-eyed and accepting of just the fantastic, right?
Right.
What that does for us as far as stories go, because the whole point of stories is to bring us back to that state of wide-eyed, fantastical world is full of possibilities. And so I feel like that's why I feel like understanding those stories that moved me so much when I was younger is so important, because it could just be chance if that was the first thing I watched, or it could be that it actually communicates something that goes beyond and in its own simplicity got at something very special and transcendent.
Yeah.
But yeah,
totally.
And I still love 342 of Bleach. It's good.
Jad the Mad, for me, the highest impact moment in anime is a moment from Attack on Titan that hasn't actually been animated yet.
Oh, yeah.
As for fiction in general, my personal highest impact moment was the ending of the TV series Blake's 7. This was a 70s BBC sci-fi show about a group of freedom fighters who used a mysterious ship to fight the villainous Federation. It was cited as an inspiration for Firefly and may or may not take place in the Doctor Who universe.
Oh, dang. That's really cool.
Anyway, through 4 seasons, you follow these struggles with...
Oh, it was probably continuing it on something in
the message got cut off.
Yeah. Character limit or some such, but yeah.
Yeah. High impact also can come from just being creative with your stories.
Memorable is high impact. Exactly.
Well, yeah, that's also a thing of, I would say it's a chicken and egg situation, because high impact moments just tend to be memorable as
right.
well.
High impact is the result, not the thing in and of itself.
Right.
Which is why it's subjective, because, again, it's about the impact that it has on the person.
Right. So it just ends up being memorable. You guys cannot talk about build-up, high impact, without Hunter x Hunter's Chimera Ant arc, I'm guessing is what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah. We already have been mentioning that. That's something that specifically within the story of Hunter x Hunter, I would still say for the most part, I would find it very difficult to recommend Hunter x Hunter to someone because of how much time you spend prior to that with regards to the build-up. And it's something that I would say that I could totally recommend it to people, but I would much more easily recommend a show with less ambition that hits a lot of the build-up moments, I would say, more smoothly, because Hunter x Hunter's really only big issue, in my opinion, is just the amount of pacing, stuff it has to deal with.
I just had an interesting idea. So, the idea that, okay, what if the Chimera Ant arc was actually the high impact moment of Hunter x Hunter, the arc as a whole? And the idea, just hear me out.
Yeah.
Because there was the York New arc, which is absolutely amazing, and that's sort of like a mini high impact moment in a sense, leading up to it. But the idea that with Hunter x Hunter, the whole thing is the world and the internal consistencies and things like that, where it really is a world, right?
Right.
So that then they can have something like the Chimera Ant arc happen and use that discovery-based storytelling where you watch this thing unfold, right? With all these character motivations and moments that you know are coming. But it's not necessarily the individual character moments. It's almost like this arc is something that is only able to be done because of all the stuff that they had done previously in the show.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of fundamentally disagree on, is that one of the things that is important in the Chimera Ant arc to distinguish is that there's the arc of the Chimera Ants and all that, and then there's Gon, Killua, even Kite.
Yes.
Their whole story is completely well placed within the story. But as for actually the build up to that and their relative story within that, that's the part that's actually important. The actual world and all that other stuff.
Sure, because it only matters as it ties to the characters.
Yes, exactly. The things that I would say tie into it really well are things like the build-up of Nen, the build-up of the hunters, and maybe the themes of the certain characters' development and how that is shown in other characters prior to the Chimera Ant arc. Like, I think Meruem and Komugi's storyline is probably the greatest thing about the Chimera Ant arc. I'm sorry for all the Gon lovers and stuff like that.
But
Gon's stuff was amazing. It was really good. Yeah. But if I had to compare the two against each other, I put
Meruem and Komugi.
I almost said Keruem and Mamugi, Meruem and Komugi stuff still beats it in my mind, because it's something that is overall contained and presented within the actual arc, whereas Gon's stuff is inferred based off of a lot of build-up outside of it.
Sure.
So I see it as all being a perfect package and stuff, but I also can't help but look at it as kind of a meta-narrative of a fantasy writer who loves game systems and world
building. And he really
building.
just wanted to make this awesome world and system.
Yeah.
And then throw some amazing characters in there too.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you look at the Hunter Exam, Heaven's Arena, Greed Island, York New, it seems like every arc taught him a little bit more about being a writer and writing in this world. So that when the Chimera Ant arc happened,
he was ready.
You're right in that it could not have happened without all that previous stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual writing it separately, objectively from that, I think someone could have written it. It just wouldn't have worked as well.
Right.
Because, it wouldn't have been Togashi. Yeah. It wouldn't have been that story. So,
by the way, Lyria, the way to make us talk about ping pong with build-up, yes, it absolutely does have build-up. And one of the things that is amazing about ping pong is that you don't realize what exactly it's building up to, right? You think it does these things where it makes you think it's building up to one thing, right? And you're like, okay, cool. And then it introduces this new perspective on things that you haven't seen before, right? And then suddenly all the other build-up that we've had prior was also build up along a different parallel line, and it just it's incredible.
Yeah. Mesker's point is saying it's not build up if it's not intended. Discovery storytelling stumbles on those high impact moments generally.
Sure,
and that's for the most part right. It is something that is very hard to even have build up at all, even be communicated to your audience without it being either too forced or in such a way that they actually pick up on it. What generally happens, and this is something that I very much appreciate in certain stories, is where they'll basically put in subtle build up and everything, and basically the story is so layered and deep that they'll say, okay, this subtle foreshadowing is something you could have noticed, but you will get way more out of it on the rewatch, which is why I think that a lot of times you're in kind of a catch-22 situation where you want to have that aspect of it, and that's where I think a lot of thrillers fail, is that the whodunit aspect isn't as engaging on the second watch through. But then you have these stories like Hunter x Hunter where it's like, I can see a lot of rewatch value in this, but the overall package that it's still presented in is so large and expansive and filled with all these other things. It's the equivalent of going to someone's videos that's like a 6-hour dissertation on YouTube, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to watch this on double speed.
Sure. Or so I'm going to find the person who basically their whole channel is just to pull out 12-minute clips and post highlights.
And that is not fair, unfortunately, to the show. Because the show is basically then being chopped up for the purposes of just the enjoyment of those specific high-impact moments.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like longer shows in general, struggle with.
And that's something that, as if you notice, the longer, as time goes on, there are less shows that will try and do that because of how the internet just generally speeds things up, and people's attention spans are getting shorter, right?
Yeah.
That they veer away from that. One of the best examples I would say of this is Clanad. The early parts of Clanad, there's good stuff in there, but you haven't seen it, but I
was getting mixed up with something else. Never mind. Keep going.
But the super high impact moments of Clanad is really just the last core, the entire last core, and it is fantastic, and it is amazing, and it is incredible, and I definitely want to watch it with you sometime. But the thing is, if you were to just watch that out of context, and I've thought about it so much because I would love to show people just that last core because it really is so good, but without the previous 3 cores, it doesn't have the same weight because you haven't spent the same amount of time with these characters. You haven't got to know them and things like that. Even if there were parts of the previous 3 cores that I didn't particularly like, right? Because I felt it was kind of dated or, didn't age as well or whatever, right? But I still can't deny what that last core did, right? And it's this catch-22 where you want to tell everybody about this amazing thing that you've seen, but at the same time you know that not everyone... Different people will have different things that they value, right? And for me, when I watched Clanad, I was watching it and getting through the build-up because I knew how good I didn't know how good, but I had heard about how good the last core was going to be, right? But even then, I probably wouldn't have watched it if I didn't know about that, right? Because I didn't particularly care too much for a lot of the stuff that happened during the build-up, right?
Totally.
But then there's the people who didn't know that the last core was coming and were watching it and were like, yeah, cool, this is great, I like it, this is my jam, right? And then they get surprised by the last core and it blows their mind, But then when they try and go and tell people about it, it's tough because you're telling them about the main thing, not the stuff that comes before. But, yeah.
One of the things that I saw someone mention here is that do you think as Memento Mori Twilight, do you think having a more dramatic storyline makes it easier to let build-up moments and high-impact story arcs hit easier? So what I think you're saying is that basically if a story is more intense or more just in your face with his presentation, it has more conflict. An example would be a dramatic show is not necessarily a slice of life show. Something with a lot more...
It could be, but
intense emotions and stuff. It is easier, I think, to present your characters, which then correlates over to that
aggressive
stuff
character introduction is very good.
Yes. One of the things that... I can actually bring D&D into this. In tabletop RPGs, one of the examples of how you can... Let's say you're rolling a character, and you want to have some backstory that's kind of cool, and it's going to get built up over the course of the campaign, and people will notice it piece by piece as you layer it into your roleplay. One of the things that's unfortunate is that people who, I'd say, like me, for instance, who are kind of new to this whole thing, what we'll do sometimes is give, I would say, really unsubtle nods, like, I have backstory, and I'm an edgy, deep character, and I've got all this stuff, and people are like,
let me exposit a bit about where I've come from.
But keep it vague so that you are begging for more. And it's like, we haven't been interested in you yet. We don't care about you, so why would we care about your backstory yet?
Yep.
And one of the things that you can do to, I would say, is a cool trick for role-playing, but also in stories, is aggressively introduce a specific aspect of your character. With all these shonen characters, it's just they scream, they cry if they're Deku, they have something that they're fiercely passionate and emotional about. One second.
Yeah.
And that aspect of them provides a perfect thing to contrast that moment when you give them backstory and characterization later, or you foreshadow it via your roleplay or your story.
To continue with the D&D analogy and connect it also to the whole idea of the all that, if you look at Critical Role, which you should, because it's great, long episodes, but hey, look at the highlights.
Yes.
See, those things exist. The things that they will do as role players and as actors to make people invested in their characters will not actually be anything about the backstory or even what happens to their characters, because they don't have control over that, right? It's an interactive thing. The DM decides, and they're not the main character, so they won't necessarily get the spotlight. What they'll do is it'll be about their character voice. And not like necessarily the literal voice, although that is a huge part of it because they are voice actors, but it will be how the character does the things that they do. And by doing that, they won't need to tell people, say, I have a tragic backstory, because they can hear it in their voice. They can hear that this person has seen some things, that this person just needs a break, right? That they feel exhausted at all times, right? And you can do that, and that's a way to get your audience to get to know this character, even though they don't really know them, and then that makes them want to know them. With the case of the shonen, generic, or Deku crying, or whatever, the reason they do that, even though it can get kind of a bad rep with, unfortunately, things like Black Clover. Nothing against Black Clover, I haven't seen it, but I know the meme of the squawking main character. The reason they do that is because it works, right? And it's good. But, then there might just be a bad example of it, and then people say, oh, no, you don't want to focus on that, right? But that can be one of the most incredible things that you can do for a character. That idea of less is more, because then you don't have to actually tell them. You'll get the audience to ask you.
Right. So with these high-impact moments, with the build-up to them, our opinion, generally, is keep it all character-centric. Keep it all specifically around the characters. Frame as much or almost all of the build-up around characterization. I swear, I don't know why stories don't get this. This is the one thing that I feel like is not like my opinion. This is just a smart thing just story writers need to clue into, is that build-up should be, and almost always should be, focused around characterization.
Yeah, you can do different things because there are different aspects to stories, right?
Yes.
And in certain stories, like for instance, for those high-octane sort of whodunit thriller things, there's a reason that those exist, right? And for those, the characters might not be the most important part.
Right.
But most of the time, the characters are the most important part. I would say they always are, but you can sort of get away with not having to be the priority one some of the time. But even in the cases where it doesn't have to be, if you do anyways, that will make that story stand head and shoulders above the rest. Totally. The biggest thing that both of us will rag on Bleach for is the fact that it doesn't do anything really with the characters. The reason I love episode 342 is because it feels like this glimmer of hope potentially returned to form if they actually were to stick with something like this where they do focus on the characters, and that's the whole point of the episode. But then you have things like Hunter x Hunter where they keep the characters the main focus, and they still have the world and the mechanics of the power system and everything in there too, right? But they make sure that the characters are there as well.
Right.
And that makes it so that everything is worth it.
Yes. That's why we love Haikyuu so much.
Yes.
One of the things about Haikyuu that was done really well was every single time they would do build-up, some character would... That's the other thing that's good to focus on. I'm gonna clarify something that I said earlier. When I say characterization, I don't mean screen time for characters. I mean actually having the characters showcase what their character is.
Who they are.
There is something that is very easy, I would say, as a trick to get around this whole problem. Have your characters be one-note, one-dimensional shticks.
Yeah.
But have them repeat that shtick in different ways over and over and over again if you have to. The example is that if you are struggling to come up with characterization for, say, the Tanakas of the group in Haikyuu,
then start out having them be the Tanaka.
Yeah.
Right?
Just give them that one thing that they do.
Yep.
And then anytime you feel like I can squeeze in some characterization here, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
And then
Don't
just
even
throw
hesitate.
that in alongside.
Because everyone will then go, wait a minute, I have to recontextualize this character's little bit of characterization with everything they've shown thus far. But it's not that tricky because they've given us so far as this one note character thing here. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's why I love Ensemble Cast. But hold on, there's some follows we have to shout out here. Adam Frostbite and D End. Thank you so much for the follows.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you here.
There
are a couple of questions as well that were pretty
Yeah.
good as well. I think someone was saying, would you? Here it is. Trashokan. Would you also count controversial things as high impact moments as they impacted the community? For example, Raising Goblin Slayer controversy. I'm sure you have at least heard about it. We've heard about it, but we don't know the details. The main thing that's kind of a big thing with this is that to do one that's a little bit more impactful for everyone, I would say, would be like the Neon Genesis Evangelion ending. That was a very high impact moment, not just in the community of anime, not just in the anime itself, but just as a whole.
Yeah.
People were shooketh by that ending.
Yeah.
And as far as would we consider the controversy part, like if we took out all of the actual things that made it the ending of the plot and all that other stuff, and we just had like it be a controversial part, like no, that's not a high impact moment.
And the thing is that when you say controversy here, what I think you really mean is controversy is a side effect.
Yeah.
But what you really mean is you mean shock value. And the thing is that shock value can be very effective, right? There's a reason twists exist in stories.
Yep.
Here's the potential issue. High impact moments are subjective. High impact, that is the effect that it has on a person. And not everyone will find the same things shocking, but also the more you share something that has a high impact moment, and usually that will color how you share the thing with somebody, then that will change their expectations, which will change the impact of the moment.
Okay, unpack that.
So,
I'm
for
lost.
instance, Madoka Magica.
Oh, okay.
Now, Madoka Magica is infamous, right? When it first came out, I wasn't particularly in the anime community at that time, but I've heard from the people who were, and Episode 3 had a very particular impact on people, right?
Right.
Because of the anime community and because of the preparations and everything that the studio had taken to make sure that people would not see that coming, right? But now, for instance, if I show someone Madoka Magica, one, they may have already heard of it, and they know sort of the reputation, which means that Episode 3 might not actually mean much to them, right? And if I'm coming into them being like coming into the story and like, you know, presenting it to them being like, this is so good, you need to watch it. Okay, wait for episode 3. And I'm like telling them that there's this thing that I need to look forward to, and there's a high impact moment coming here. Well, then they'll build it up in their minds, and then they'll actually see it, and it might not actually be everything that it was chalked up to be.
So what does that have to do with what they're talking about?
Is that with something like that, it can be a high impact moment, but one of the reasons that it is a high impact moment, I feel like, is because it takes people by surprise.
Okay, well we're talking about the controversy. So the answer for that is no. Just almost emphatically, a controversial moment is not a high impact moment.
No, yeah, because the controversy, that's a side effect. That's the fact that people have different opinions about whether or not it was a high impact moment and how good of
shock value moments or shock moments are not necessarily high impact moments either. Again, that's a subjective thing.
It can. I would say.
And you're saying that basically you can change to where it's not even a shock moment based on how it's shared.
Well, yeah, because shock is all about the way that it's perceived and taken in by the audience, right? But one of the problems with shock things, especially when you get into controversy, is then it can become a high impact moment in the negative.
Yes.
Right? And then it completely turns the person off to the entire story.
Yeah.
And it's still a high impact moment, but not in a way that you would, desire, for the story as a whole.
Gotcha.
You know, so you'd be careful with those.
Yeah, I would say that what he's talking about is way more application based than actual kind of from the standpoint of just talking about something in theory. So like what I hear you saying, Jacob, is basically that the oversharing of something like that diminishes the value potentially of not only the shock value moments but also the controversial moments, because then it can twist and become something to a negative.
Right.
With what I'm seeing this person talk about is more or less that there are moments that will be high impact and the community will latch onto them specifically and then get all these opinions about them, and then the community talk surrounding it dictates it as a high impact moment, relegating people to then regard it as such, or they are, I don't know.
Well, yeah, that I could say that's just about basically communities in general and how they can kind of push people away when they tend to basically hold something up as something so strongly that when there is disagreements with that, it ends up just causing disconnections. Like just you end up cutting yourself off from the community, and the community is like half the fun of stories anyways. So
right, like an example of an anime that went so big in the community, and I did not ever really like fully ever recover after watching it, was ReZero. ReZero is an anime that took the anime community by storm. It was absolutely incredible for a time. And then, in my opinion, it just took the biggest like hot dump on itself and became just total garbage. Now, I am supremely biased in this thing here. I do not expect anyone to take my opinion in this seriously, but ReZero as a show is an example of something where I feel like the anime community did itself unfortunately in. It did itself in by that show. There were some really big high impact moments in ReZero. There was some really good build up in ReZero. There was some really good characters in ReZero.
Yep.
But I don't know what that show was in the last, 8 episodes.
Well, it's a great example of how you can have a negative high-impact moment, right? And especially if you're going into it with improperly set expectations where you're basically expecting perfection, right?
Right.
As opposed to realizing that every creator is human.
Oh, hold on. Oh. Expecting perfection was never on the table.
No, I know. But it's the idea that, the higher your expectation, not that they ever reach perfection, but, the closer, the more you expect from a series or, anything, then when it messes up, it's in your eyes, even if it's not necessarily an objective mess up, right? Even if it's just something that subjectively to you see as being a mistake, right?
It's an example of the whole build-up, high-impact moments relationship that we're talking about here. Because this one is not built between the story and the audience. This one is built between the community and the people that are basically going to be new viewers of the narrative, for instance.
And that's why Lunar, what Jacob said is why I'm so adamant about going into series with as few details as possible.
Same.
I personally feel like I get more stronger high impact moments when everything about the show is fresh. I absolutely agree. That's why we're so big on no spoilers, because the idea is that it's not about whether the specific high impact moment is spoiled, right? We know the twist about, such and such, right? That can absolutely suck. Getting spoiled on one of the high impact moments in Gurren Lagann for both me and Caleb sucked. It was terrible, right?
Yeah, guys, we were spoiled on one of the 3 worst things you can spoil for someone in anime.
Yeah.
One is the end of a certain show, that
bang,
one.
yeah.
The other is Gurren Lagann, and then probably the third one is probably Code Geass. Yeah.
But the thing is that you can get spoiled for something just by hearing about it. The fact, Madoka Magica is a great example. If you were to watch Madoka Magica not knowing anything about it, then episode 3 might hit you really hard and be like, whoa, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But for me, and this was more of an exploratory thing, but I heard about Madoka Magica and actually started watching it because I heard someone say, and then I got to the point where such and such happens, and I was just like, wait, what? Are we talking about the same show? And then I was like, okay, I'll watch this show, and I ended up liking it a lot. Yeah. But it's tough.
Yeah. I agree. I thought I was alone in not enjoying the second half of ReZero. Well, it's weird because it's like the second third of ReZero,
or I would say like the last quarter of ReZero, because I mean episode 18 exists.
So we have Twister. there's Twister.
There's that crazy guy who made Rem play Twister. Yeah.
There's that episode, and then there's like the episode
and that's
or
episode
two.
15.
Yeah, there's like the 2 episodes after that.
Right, 16, 17.
So then I guess it'd be the last 8 episodes. Yeah, the last 8 episodes.
But episode 18. But episode 18 is really damn good.
There's a lot of ways to look at it, Jacob, I guess.
But,
So fan bases generally scare me off, especially if it's a fan base that gets hyper-focused on shipping. God, Voltron's fan base, cough. Funny thing is, I actually have a really good friend in the Voltron fan base, and it's really cool to watch her, discuss, how much people are invested in the ships. And she's invested in her ships and stuff, but she's like, here I am, just quiet in the background, just drawing fan art. Y'all just going to war over the dumbest things. So I love that. Yes, the fan bases can get extreme and toxic in specific instances, but the fan bases does not necessarily say anything specifically about the show. It can say something, but more often it doesn't.
Right. Most of the time it just changes your perspective going into the show, and then that causes you to get disappointed because it didn't live up to it.
Right. That's why Jacob and I are very careful with our recommendations being very simple. Just basically, we know that you're someone that we value the opinion of, and you say, oh, we recommend this? Okay, we'll put it on a list and just remember that show exists. But and we don't then go and research it.
And then maybe a little thing of this is the kind of show that it is so that we know when to watch it. When we're in the mood for something that's, blank. Yeah.
Oh, good. I was spoiled on all 3.
Oh, dear Lord.
I feel so bad for you. Oh, God.
That's horrible.
That's horrible. Experiencing those for the first time it's wonderful.
Oh, man.
Ooh, Mecha Shu. Would you say Suki finally getting his moment in Haikyuu Season 3 is a high-impact moment that had an insanely good build-up to it? It took 3 seasons for that moment to come, and the build-up, in my opinion, was masterfully sprinkled in the previous seasons.
And see, here's the thing. I would say it was masterfully sprinkled, and that's the important thing, because I could see it being something where if we had a moment like that and it had been all the show was building up to for 3 seasons, it would have fallen flat, right? You can't have a show like Lost that actually ends in a way that satisfies everybody. You just can't, right? But because they sprinkled it throughout, and because Haikyuu as a whole is such an enjoyable show, the characters are so fun to just watch, then it was just this amazing cherry on top, right? And it was quite the cherry, right? It was incredible. But it was the idea that was something that we got in addition to all the other stuff that we were already on board for.
Yeah. An example of a show that I think handles build-up masterfully is you want to look at the shows where the build-up hasn't capitulated yet, and you are in love with the build-up itself. That's why I think Lost is actually one of the greatest TV shows of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really care about people that say the ending was garbage.
It's just improperly set expectations where people are saying, oh, it's all going to be about the ending, rather than, no, you've been having your cake this whole time.
Yeah. Made in Abyss. Made in Abyss has one of the most brilliantly executed build-ups, and I still don't know what they're building up towards.
Right,
but I do know that it's going to keep them. They're going to keep going deeper.
And so, Made in Abyss is another one of those things that controversial or shock or whatever, all the different adjectives that you could use for it. I would not want to sell someone on Made in Abyss because of those high impact moments that come later. I feel like that would do the show a complete disservice, right? It's all the other stuff that you get on the journey to those high impact moments, and then you get surprised by them, and
oh boy,
shotgun right to the heart,
Yeah. What about slow reveal high impact moments, like with a certain character's death importance echoing throughout the series, or when a series just drops a plot point in the background in the early parts of the show and it does not cut back into promise until later? A Chekhov's plot point, if you will. I don't really like those Chekhov's plot points. Generally, they are handled poorly, and it's basically the excuse for... Actually, there was a ProZD video that happened recently. It was about the Disney villain twists. And it was like... yes, it's Mr. Johnson. Surprise, he's the villain. And it's like
the evil CEO, hotel tycoon or whatever.
Or not even like someone that's that obvious. Just some random guy who was introduced in the beginning and then they don't get introduced until way later again.
Yeah, there's twists that depend on things and that haven't been built up to, and you don't want to do that. But one of the things that the Chekhov's plot point can be very good for is basically something to just say, when we introduce this, not when we make some development along this, but when we actually shift focus to this, you know that it's going to be coming at some point because of the Chekhov's plot point. Azula's introduction in Avatar: The Last Airbender, I would say, is a fantastic example of this. Because even though you don't actually probably notice her when you do the flashback, when she's actually first shown in the storm, right? Because then you're like, oh, there's Iroh. Oh, hey, there's Zhao. Oh, cool, Zhao's there too.
Wait, who's that girl smiling?
Yeah, you don't pay attention to Azula, but it's there so that way when you're like, wait, why are they just bringing up the stupid power escalation other family member for additional drama? It's like, no. They were gonna get to that the whole time. It just wasn't the right time, and now it is. Yeah, and that can be a great way to do it.
Yeah, Zula's a great villain. Only thing is, I wouldn't a lot of these shows. What? Oh, you wouldn't have bothered checking out Berserk, Madoka Magica, and Made in Abyss without getting spoiled slightly on some of those things. Well, that's rough. That's rough. That's something that I totally understand where you're coming from. I would say get some good anime recommendations, friends, and then you recommend shows to each other.
Right, that way, because one of the things that's best about anime, I feel like, is not necessarily the stories themselves, but it's the act of discovering them, right?
Yep.
The fact that we can discover Kill la Kill, something that was shouting at us this entire time, right? And be like, oh my god, this show is amazing.
How
have we never seen it before? Or JoJo's and things like that. Is because, A, we didn't watch it when we probably should have, right? But whatever. We ended up getting to it eventually because we had people that would just tell us about these things that are good, and then we check them out in our time when we're ready, and then we can get blown away by it, right?
Right.
So, and that's the constant catch-22, because it's like, do you try and make sure that this person watches it, or do you make sure that they watch it at the right time?
Right. Litter was saying, that reminds me, being a part of the overall anime community since I got the internet in the early 2000s, I was spoiled on 90% of the major stuff in JoJo. Oof.
Ooh.
If you want to know what anime is the master of build-up, you're watching it already. It's Hajime no Ippo. All right, awesome.
I get the feeling it's going to do that very well.
Who cares what's at the bottom of the abyss? It's literally about the journey.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, literally. I care about what's at the bottom of the abyss, pardon you. Forgot to mention with my last questions, hashtag Stardust Crusaders. Hey, someone remembers. Awesome. Points for your faction, for sure.
What's made in the abyss? The bonds we have created.
Nice. I recently just started Game of Thrones, which is infamous for its shocking deaths. While I go in knowing, like everyone, who dies in Season 1, I'm still enjoying the high-impact moments because of its immense and complex story. By the way, how do you recommend this series without giving too much away while persuading them? Oh, I'm so good at this. I am a wizard at getting people into Avatar. I've probably got like some 50 people to watch Avatar
it's pretty
over
crazy.
the course of my life.
It's quite impressive. For a general answer to a general question,
yes,
I would say that what you want to do is you want to communicate to the person the heart of the story, not any of the specifics about the story. And the heart of the story is very important because a lot of the times the shocking moments and all that stuff, that's just basically to get people in so that they can then see the heart of the story. Right. A great example of this is the Bunny Girl Senpai anime that's out now, right? The name has almost nothing to do with the story. It really has nothing to do with it. And the whole Bunny Girl aspect is not even, it's like brought up 3 times in the entire show, right?
Gotcha.
But that's just basically to get people in so that then they can get the rest of the show, which is just a show that has a lot of great dialogue, right?
Cool.
So if I were to try and get someone to watch Bunny Girl, I would say it's a show that has great dialogue. And that's most everything that I would tell them about it.
Yeah, an example would be for Avatar is I would say it's a fantasy story for all ages done right.
Yep. Yeah.
And most people who like fantasy stories will go, well, wait a minute.
Where's the butt in there?
Is that it? I'm like, no, really. That's it.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, all right. Yeah. Yeah.
Part of recommending a show is taking time to contemplate what makes you love it. Yeah.
In a vague emotional sense, and learn how to put those into complementary words that convey your love and passion towards the show in a way that is palpable and possible for someone else to grasp at. Yeah, It's an art form. It takes time. I've been bad at it plenty of times, and sometimes I end up just caving into spoiling people because I can't figure out a way to actually get them to watch it. But on another level, there's an urgency aspect that you kind of pull out of eventually, which is if you want someone to watch something, you don't have to have a sense of urgency. If your goal is actually them to watch it soon, then you might have a problem. But what was it? I wanted someone to get into anime. I really just wanted to, so I went all according to Machiavellian, genius here. I went and got their best friend into Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then from getting their best friend into Avatar, they went and got them into Avatar, and then that person went and got into anime, which then spilled over to the next person, the person I actually wanted to get into anime, getting into anime, and now I'm recommending things like Haikyuu and the other stuff there.
And that's the great thing. It's like, as a great philosopher, HK47 once said, don't go after the master when you're trying to kill a Jedi. The next person that tries to kill a master and kill them directly with a gun or something, I will kill them myself. You go after the apprentices. You go after the people they're protecting, right? You go after the people near them. You get them to your side. And then by osmosis, suddenly they'll be surrounded and they will have no choice.
Everyone in chat is like, oh my god, what are these people? What's wrong with
Jacob
them?
screaming during MHA 210 is one hell of a high impact moment, by the way. Thank you so much, Mekashu.
Yeah, that's
high impact Jacob screaming.
Basically, all Attack on Titan high impact moments are almost not build up and explained later.
That is something that Attack on Titan tends to do.
That's kind of true, and that is kind of a trick. It's kind of a gimmick that they use for to great effect. Oh my god, I forgot to shout out Puck is my waifu. Thank you so much for the follow.
And
glad to have you here.
Name.
Yeah, fantastic name. Oh, Jad the Mad, I'd be the first person to discourage spoilers, but I think there is some credit due for shows that can still succeed with high-impact moments in total isolation. MHA particularly excels in YouTube clip culture and puts on tin hat, may have contributed to its success. Watch any one-for-all moment in isolation, and enough information is provided for even a new viewer to understand what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, and there is definitely something to be said for stories and story elements that are able to be sort of extracted from the context and still have everything that you need. It's a complete piece in and of itself, and that's fantastic, right? And there are many stories that are like that, and those are incredible.
Yeah.
But it's that question of, would they still get more if they had seen all the stuff leading up to it? And but
and what he's probably talking about is good for mainstream audience.
Oh yeah,
that's way better just for general, I would say, marketing. But most of the things that we're talking about are kind of on a interpersonal, relational.
Right. If you're going one-on-one, then that's like the way to go. And things like that might be actually how you get people into things. Like Caleb's getting into Critical Role now. He's totally a fan of it.
Yeah.
And I am too. I started on clips, 3-minute clips, and I watched those, and eventually I watched my first episode of the show, and then I kept going, right? And Caleb did the same thing. So everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, totally. Was there a VIP shout out this podcast? Yes. We shouted out Christmas for Juan.
Yeah.
Speaking of recommending shows with vagueness, I really want to recommend an anime coming in January 2019, not just the bros, but stream and the VOD in general. It's called Kaguya-sama, Love is War. To sum it up, a romantic comedy where the two leads think they're in Death Note, and one of the manga artists is trying to turn it into a psychological horror. What?
That sounds awesome.
What?
It sounds awesome and ridiculous.
So I'm guessing Madhouse is...
Or at the very least, I mean, they could have it just be bleeped out. Like, is this like
Doot Note,
Nethdote or something like that?
Yeah, for sure.
But oh, nice. That sounds like there'd be a lot of fourth wall breaking, which sounds amazing.
I like fourth wall breaking for sure. I'm personally all for context when it comes to adding to high impact moments, but I still personally believe that MHA 210 is such a perfect, complete package that it provides all the context you need for that episode, specifically in a concentrated drip feed.
I mean,
it's a perfect episode with regards to MHA. Like MHA's episodes individually are all a good quality. But that one is probably the best individual episode of MHA so far, even with the whole, one for all for one stuff. So, I can't deny that.
Yeah.
Obligatory Space Dandy Shills. Please watch it.
Yes.
And you're not even Lyriot. Did she pay you? My friends tried to get me into Ruby, but they never let up. Eventually I developed an aversion to wanting to watch the show.
Yes, that can absolutely happen.
Totally can happen.
There was a show way back when called Daily Lives of High School Boys, right?
Oh.
And I very much wanted to get Caleb to watch it, right? So show was on YouTube, and I ended up saying, hey, Caleb, want to watch this YouTube video with me that's really funny? He's like, sure, why not? And then it's the episode of the show that I've been telling him about this whole time. He's like, and the look on his face, I was just like, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea, but he was like, Jacob,
top 10 anime betrayals.
Like, yeah, top 10 anime betrayals right there. And it was just like, okay, and then I realized, like, that doesn't really work.
It doesn't really work.
It's true, because the person has to be willing to watch the thing in order to watch it. And that's why I feel like a lot of the times people will sort of overshare, because they're wanting to get them hyped about the show before even getting them into the show, but then that can rob them of the very hypeness that they would develop once they actually started watching the show.
Yep.
So,
yep. Yeah. And how this all ties back to high impact moments is that like communicating the high impact moments to people in order to get them into a series, I think is just a dangerous way to do it. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, I wouldn't do that. I'd say if you find that maybe there's an exception, give it a shot with one person at a time, see if it works.
Right.
But it's an interesting area to go through.
Because to make the analogy again to falling in love, the best love is not the school crush where you watch from a distance and are all like, oh my god, how do I talk to them? The best ones are the loves you find along the way that were there the entire time and you didn't realize it, right, until it surprises you. And that's, I feel like, the same with high impact moments. You want to get people into it and just let them discover them, because the whole idea of a high impact moment, of elevating all the rest of the show, sometimes people will talk about the idea of that as like, oh, that's just personal bias kind of a thing, right? And you really shouldn't do that because it's blinding you to the faults of this show. Or is it actually one of the most amazing, beautiful things ever in storytelling, and that's why we love stories, and that you should never take that away from somebody. They should always have the opportunity to have that.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah. Jad the Mad. You don't know true pain until you accidentally make your best friend averse to One Punch Man.
Ooh, ouch.
Yep. What was the show that I made it so that no one wanted to watch it for the longest time? It wasn't Avatar. I've never really failed at that. It was...
Avatar always wins in the end.
Avatar always wins in the end. It was something else. What did I actually shill for a long time? It wasn't even an anime, I don't think. I think it was Heroes.
It could have been Heroes.
I think it was Heroes. I used to really love Heroes.
Heroes was the superhero show before superhero shows were cool.
Yeah. Asiago Chicken Farm, nice name. One of my favorite high-impact moments is the end of Book 2, Episode 8 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and how one episode built up to one of the better choreographed fights of the season.
Yes.
Oh, the chase. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chase is great.
Yeah, that was a good fight.
And again...
They nerfed it tough, though.
Most everyone in Avatar: The Last Airbender has one super cringe moment.
Yep.
That's Toph's.
That's Toph's moment.
I have the surprise in this person, and I am an almost all-powerful earthbender. I'm going to move the ground underneath their feet so that they get confused and fall over. No. You should have just eaten her into the ground, and she's dead. But that's another great example where they had this awesome high-impact moment of the fight at the end.
Yes.
And you don't realize that that's going to be happening. Mm-hmm. Because the show is something completely different. At first, it's talking about interpersonal conflicts with a new person in the group. Then it's talking about a chase, and it's like, okay, we need to get away. And then it brings back in all the characters to one place for this crazy battle with this new person that we've never seen before.
Yep.
I mean, they had seen it before, but not really.
Not really.
It was fantastic.
In terms of fighting, yeah.
Yeah.
Hunter x Hunter manga reactions when? Who knows?
Yeah.
I can assure you, Lyra did not pay me off. # Cult of Danny Baby. If we're doing shout-outs, Princess Tutu, I will send it to you to enjoy at your leisure. Oh,
I've heard about that one.
Okay, thank you. Sagacious Last, P.O. Box.
That's the one that I've heard, like, when I hear about it, it's usually referenced in comparison with Madoka Magica. And it's basically saying...
What?
Yeah. Uh-huh. And
okay.
that
I guess I haven't heard anything about Princess Tutu, I guess.
Yeah, but basically that a lot of people think that you should watch it before watching Madoka Magica because it's more of like a more classic magical girl show that has a lot of like good surprises in there.
Oh, I was watching Princess Tutu and my dad was in the room. I thought he was bored, but not saying anything to be polite. When I clicked off Princess Tutu, my dad got mad because he was super invested in it. The realization that I had effed up in that capacity broke my heart.
Oh my gosh.
What's the show that...
I really want to watch that
it was
show.
Steins Gate. So my dad really, really, like... doesn't usually like kind of the idea of anime, like up until about a few years ago. But we told him about an anime that dealt with time travel in an intelligent way, and he was like, I'm a sucker
you
for
had
sci-fi.
my curiosity, but now you have my erection.
Yes, exactly. And he's just like, all right, sure. And we're like, well, it's really anime. And he's like, yeah, that's fine.
If it has time travel.
So we got the Blu-ray and went and watched it and stuff. And we watched it in the dub, which the dub is pretty good.
Quite good.
People say what they will about how it changed the intent behind the words or whatever and stuff like that.
It's fantastic. J. Michael Tatum put in a lot of hours and blood, sweat, and tears into that. It's incredible.
Yeah, the sub is great too, but yeah. So he watches Steins Gate, and what we ended up thinking would be the negative actually ended up being the positive.
Oh, yeah.
He fell in love with Mayuri.
Oh, well, yeah, that too.
He put the doo-doo-doo thing on as his notifications on his phone.
Yeah, and like all the stuff that people usually say about Steins Gate as being the negative thing of that it takes too long, there's too much build-up, and like as they're sort of exploring time travel, that was his jam. Like he's a hardcore sci-fi nerd.
He loved all the pop culture references to the 2010s era and stuff.
Yep.
And it was
all the stuff about the Large Hadron Super Collider and stuff. He's like, yep. I remember reading those articles about the idea of creating miniature black holes and all that stuff. He's like, yep.
Well, yeah, he loved it, and when it was finished, he wanted to rewatch it all over again. One of the things that high impact moments, I would say, also can kind of alter our perception of is we think that this specific moment is what's going to sell someone on the anime, but it's not usually. It's going to be something completely different that you would not have expected.
Yeah. Toradora is another great example. So showing my dad this, right? And I'm thinking like this is one of those ones where I'm like, okay, I love this show. It's an anime. It's weird, but just for me, watch it with me just to see if you like it. I love the show, and if for the stars somehow aligned and you liked it too, that would be great, right? He watched it, and as soon as he saw the opening, he was like, I love it.
Yeah.
Because he was like, this is all a representation of puberty and growing up and all the craziness that happens there and the confusion and trying to figure out who you are. And I'm like, yes, exactly. I had never thought about that before, but yes, cool. And he loved it.
Yeah. So yeah. The show that I started hating because of the extreme amount of people trying to get me into it and the community in general is Hunter x Hunter. Right now I'm in a neutral relationship with it. I know it's a good show and I see why everyone loves it, but God, I hate the average fan base of the show. Now, here's something.
Watch it on your own time.
Yeah, here's something that's really kind of good to do with certain shows like this is like we had
we've had
experiences
with the less positive sides of the Hunter x Hunter fan base,
and certain things that we didn't necessarily help that in any way, but still. Certain communities can get a bit over the top with regards to their appreciation for a specific thing because, and this is something that's kind of ties into the high moments actually. The high moments have this real potential to stick in your long-term memory.
Yep.
But you know what's interesting about long-term memory? A lot of who we are as people gets defined by what just occupies our long-term memory.
Sure.
What we think about constantly, what we spend our time thinking on. And that's why I think the shipping community always has a small toxic group of it, is because they spend a ridiculous amount of time thinking about their fictional ships.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, that's totally fine. That's their choice to do that. But one of the things that you should just realize is that if your identity, if your person gets attached to a fictional thing to the point where if someone makes any kind of negative thought or opinion about that thing, you will feel it as an attack on yourself.
Right.
And that's a broken mind. That is a broken
in a more comedic explanation
yes.
that is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. Is the ProZD video where he's like, when you show your friend a thing. And, they're like, it's like the Goofy movie or something like that, I think is what it's supposed to be. And the person's like, oh, yeah, it's good, right? Yeah, it was pretty good. And they're like, I know, right? Is it pretty good? What do you mean, pretty good?
Yeah, exactly.
Because one of the best parts about stories is being able to have that community aspect, talk with people, nerd out about those high impact moments that just were mind blowing for you, right? And then you show it to this person that you're really close to, and you're like, you're gonna love this, you're gonna love this. And then they get to the high impact moment, and it's not a high impact moment for them, or at least not in the same way it was for you, and you're just like,
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I like that thing.
yeah.
I like that. There are people
who exist that like that thing.
Yeah.
We will not be silenced, you son of a bitch.
But I don't like this thing.
I do like this thing.
Wait, I like that thing. I like that. No,
it's that I don't like that thing.
Oh, right. So he's like, but I do like this thing. It's like, wait,
I don't like that thing. Yeah.
Oh man, this is hilarious. Oh yeah. Wait. Dr. Women Respecter. The Monogatari fan base kind of scared me. It was just too intimidating, and they go insane when you bring up the show. I watched it recently, though, and now I have a philosophy major. I really want to watch Monogatari.
I really want to watch it, too.
It just sounds so ridiculous. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Anime fandoms are kind of like cults. What do you mean, kinda? Like
First off, that word cults is thrown around way too often.
Whenever I make people watch Lord of the Rings and they're just on their phones,
yes,
that's too real.
It is so real.
That's so real.
It's one of the not Lord of the Rings. With Lord of the Rings, it's a bit more understandable because you're watching a 4-hour movie.
Right.
But anytime someone watches something and they're watching it with you, that is the prime way to get something into something. That's when it's like
something.
Get someone into something. I can words. I'm a writer. That is like this is so important to me and I love it so much. I will gladly watch it again with you just to get you to experience some of the amazingness that I see here. And you aren't even paying attention. That is worse than stepping on a Lego. Like that is that. Oh man, boy, it is just kick right to the gonads. Like it sucks. So don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
If you're watching something with somebody and they're introducing you to it, pay attention. No phones.
Yeah. All right, guys. I kind of want to wrap this up here. We're a bit on the rambling side towards towards the end of this here, but just some final questions about like high impact moments and how they've improved your appreciation for specific shows. So, what are some shows out there? And don't give what the high impact moment is. What are some shows out there that we have seen or we haven't seen that have high impact moments for you that just define the experience of that show? And just light up the comments with them.
Yep.
Light it up. I want to see all kinds of stuff on here. Stuff we've seen, stuff we haven't seen. Because we're curious. And this is something that One Piece, Code Geass, Haikyuu, Arrowmanga Sensei.
Oh, that certainly had a lot of high impact in the anime community.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Rurouni Kenshin.
Oh,
I know the author is in hot water, but the anime is good. I've heard about some of that hot water. That's the thing. Koe no Katachi. Yes.
Meruem's ending.
Oh yeah, Naruto. Bleach, Gintama, yeah.
Space Dandy being episodic
Bleach,
kind
Bleach
of
has
just
a lot of
tosses
good
impactful
things
moments.
about it. Like, okay, all right. This is gonna sound maybe weird. I will recommend if you are a fan of like any other long-running like shonen, like battle shonen, and you haven't seen Bleach, give it a shot because the first 60 episodes are quite good. I can't necessarily speak for anything past that because it's been so long and all that stuff, but you might like it.
Yeah. I'll temper that by not saying anything.
Made in Abyss, oh yeah.
Doctor Who, both classic and new Who. Yeah.
Welcome to the NHK. Yeah.
Yeah, we had that on a poll a while back.
Uh-huh.
There are two shows that got me into anime thanks to the high impact moments. DBZ and One Piece. Hunter x Hunter and Haikyuu. The high impact moments I'm looking forward to is that Ruby episode 8 reaction dropping. Wink, wink. It'll be after the stream. Don't worry. Jacob stifled Caleb mentioning Space Dandy. Damn, we'll get them next time.
Wait, I did?
No, it's fine. What always was a extremely high moment for me is the realization of everything after the end of Steins Gate. Oh, Okay.
Gotcha.
Kaiji is something you should definitely check out for a gambling anime.
Cool.
Mawaru Penguin Drum. Even though the high impact is somewhat subtle. Death Parade, the entire skate scene.
Oh, the skate scene, yeah. That...
Pingu, I'm serious. I don't know what that
entirely
is.
serious.
It's not an anime, but Helk. Emotional comedy fantasy manga.
Interesting.
These guys reading Berserk.
Zangatsu!
Zangatsu!
I did not expect the first episode to hit me so hard. But
Lunar.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That show I feel like has a lot of rewatch value just because it's so calm and sort of subtle with a lot of things it does.
Yeah. We're
Gon's
talking
character
about,
arc.
Yeah, we're not talking about specific high impact moments. We're wanting to know about shows that have high impact moments for you specifically that just defined your experience of the show.
They can be specific things and stuff for things that we have seen and such, but if you're wanting to talk about things that we haven't seen.
Green Naruto. Oh, bless you. Ping pong winning a poll was a high impact moment.
Yes, when Ping Pong won the poll, it's like
God,
truly anything is possible.
No, Donovan has high impact moments. Dang it. FMAB.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh! High impact moment every time someone says, "You activated my trap card."
You activated my Alucard.
Let's give them a soundbite, Jacob, for like a clip or something. You activated my trap card.
Screw the rules. I have money.
Shut up, Mokuba.
The hell is a bus?
Real quick, glad you guys like my Ruby fan art. Oh,
Yes.
Thanks, little duck. Yeah, her fan art is awesome.
Clan in your line April. I wonder why.
Tales of Berseria, for
Cooley.
example.
Tales of Berserk.
Kayama! Slam Dunk. Because of Slam Dunk, I played basketball and became a varsity player on our school. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Bros walk through a Divinity Original Sin 2 will be my Twitch high impact moment.
Hey, now that we have the computer.
We have guys, we have good computers now. We have really good computers now.
Really good.
Like these are boxes.
Yeah, like boxes, like squares, like cubes, like
really. You activated my magic item explosion.
Great. Can we make Caleb say "I love traps" in a serious voice now?
That's actually a thing we should do: is get a green screen and just make us say different things on Twitch.
Well, here's I don't know about Caleb, but okay.
Eat that horse. Yeah.
I love traps. There we go. You eat that horse. Yeah, that's a good one.
The absolute mad lad. Traps review. Jacob. Oh man.
I'm playing a trap in a D&D game. It's fantastic.
That is true. He is.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah.
An elf wizard that is running away playing hooky, and yeah.
MHA's All for One versus All Might this year was great.
Oh yeah.
Attempt to make a manga.
Clip it, lads. Pay me later.
Plastic Memories has a few
yeah.
good impact moments to the point that I cried. We lost into the dark side. Mission failed. We'll get him next time. You don't even have to force me to say I love traps with a serious face. Lunar, well, that's you. Like
Yeah.
you were
Trap
the
eater equals Schrodinger's wife.
Oh my god. Speaking of which, yeah, we'll get on recording that Rate Your Waifus video pretty soon this week. So
yes.
look forward to that once it gets edited and stuff. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Appreciate you all so very much. Make sure to tune in next week for the Christmas Eve podcast. And
Yes.
well, let's try and find something extra fun for Christmas Eve. You know, something unique. You know?
At least wear like Christmas hats or something.
I mean, that's the least
Watch,
we can
now
do.
we'll forget. But and then also tomorrow for Berserk.
Berserk.
Yeah, Bazaka.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to make the Friday streams happen recently, and I'm sorry for that, guys. With the Friday night bits, there's been an issue with me here, but I will be doing one this week. Promise. Actually doing one. But yeah, guys, appreciate you all. Gonna be heading out here.
Yes.
Be sure to check out our channel if you somehow stumbled upon this without going
Yeah.
through our channel or knowing anything
If so,
about that.
please also tell us how.
Because you're awesome and it's cool like that. When is Jacob gonna host Mean Review? I'm losing my patience. Oh my god. Alright guys, but we'll catch you all in the next one. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.